Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Dover Board of Selectmen's meeting for March 26, 2010. Tonight is the first time the board is ever meeting over Zoom, which is an electronic format. And so what I thought I would do is just discuss some of the rules of conduct, because it's a little different than sitting at the table together. So as a preliminary matter, for those people that are only participating via conference call, my name is Robin Hunter, and I am the chair of the Dover Board of Selectmen. My first order of business is to confirm that all the members and persons anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. So when I call your name, please answer in the affirmative. Bob Springett, a fellow member of the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
John Jeffries, my other compatriot.
Yes.
And now we also have some staff that will be participating in this meeting. First, I'd like to introduce Chris Dwelly, the town administrator.
Present.
Kate O'Brien, the assistant town administrator.
Present.
And Mona DiCillo, our town administrator.
I'm here, but I'm not the town administrator.
Oh, right. The administrator.
I can be.
Right. See, Mona, how quickly I forget.
Okay.
This evening, we don't really have any anticipated speakers, but I do notice that all three members of the Board of Health are present, and so I'm going to introduce each of you. First of all, the chair, Mr. Gerald Clark.
Good evening.
Good evening. Member of the Board of Health, Stephen Criskel.
Good evening.
And our newest member of the Board of Health, Ms. Kay Peterson, or Dr. Kay Peterson.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Well, thank you all for affirming that you are here. Somebody has us on phone and computer, because that's why there's an echo. All right, that's better. All right, so I thought what I'd also do is just discuss that this evening, this open meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Charlie Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19. We are holding this meeting telephonically or via video to mitigate the transmission of the virus COVID-19. And the governor is encouraging all bodies to participate remotely. This evening we are holding a meeting, conference call, and also video conference. This call is being recorded. Some of our attendees may be participating in this video conference, and others may be participating via conference call. So in order to conduct business, if you are participating via conference call and would like to ask a question or make a public comment, there is a chat screen, and you can let me know if you want to ask a question and I can acknowledge you. And that's for people on video. For people participating via a conference call, just be patient, and when no one's speaking, if you could just let us know, I will ask if anybody on a call would like to make a comment. Just as a note, this meeting is not being televised live this evening over the Dover cable channel. Instead, if you would like to watch it live, you can live stream it on the town's Facebook page as well as the town's YouTube page. Once this meeting is concluded, since it is being recorded, the Dover cable channel you will be able to watch it. The first item is citizen comments. And so if you are on video screen, if you raise your hand and have a comment, I acknowledge you. If you are on the phone, when I ask comments up, please. So I'll go to the video. Anybody have public comment? And now for the telephone, anybody with public comment? Okay, there being none, I'm going to move to the first item on our agenda, and that is a COVID-19 update, and I'm going to turn it over to the
Was that to me, Robin? There's quite a bit of echo.
I know, I think somebody has it on their phone as well as the computer, and that's why you get the echo.
Okay. I'd also recommend, if folks wouldn't mind, and if I may, Madam Chair, if you are not presently speaking, if you could just put your phone on mute, or also if you're live on the Zoom meeting, mute the microphone button in the bottom left, and that should help with the sound and the feedback that we're receiving. So with that, it's been an interesting but very productive 2 weeks here in town. The town's Preparedness task force, made up of the Board of Health, a Board of Selectmen member, police chief, fire chief, our EMS administrator, our COA director, our park and rec director, and members of the administration have been working around the clock to make sure that the community is both prepared for what may come, as well as to ensure that we are in place really to be able to provide services and any need to the community as it arises. So what I think I'll do is I might just quickly recap some of the major highlights and accomplishments that have been done, and then mention some of the things that we're looking at, and then folks can add in on that. So as I'd mentioned, our task force was established, and we've been meeting frequently throughout the week to really to recap, to understand what's happening across the country and across the world, and understand what's needed presently here in our community. So one of the things that we've been working on very diligently is establishing a communication channel to make sure that residents get information as it relates to the COVID-19, as well as resources in terms of what do symptoms look like, how do you protect yourself, how do you get local updates from the community. And we've done that through 4 channels using the same message. So the website is our primary resource where we host this information, and we encourage everybody to visit the site at doverma.org, where we post all these resources as well as the regular updates. We've also been using the Town of Dover's Facebook page, the Town of Dover's Twitter account, as well as recurring emails that have been going out, that I've been sending out to various community members as well as staff and committee members. And our hope is that that is disseminating the message far and wide throughout our community, and we've heard really good feedback thus far that it is. In addition, based on the Board of Health's guidance on how best to really prevent the spread of this disease, the town took immediate action specifically related to our public buildings, our businesses throughout the community, social distancing practices for everybody in town. And some of those have taken the shape in the form of all town buildings are closed to the public. They're being staffed by skeleton crews. And again, that's to minimize human-to-human contact. Business, we are still open for business and conducting our services on. and we have a detailed guide on our website for anyone who may have a question or need to get in contact with someone from the town. So you're still able to do that, but we are encouraging people and directing them to do so digitally. In addition, our playgrounds and our tennis courts and areas where people typically congregate in large crowds have been closed down until further notice. In addition, the Board of Health has worked very closely with a lot of our community partners, both in terms of nonprofits as well as our private enterprises in town, to really make sure that, again, human contact is limited based on the guidance that we're getting from the CDC and the Mass Department of Public Health. In addition, we have established via this task force and really with the community outpouring of support, a way for individuals to identify if they'd like to volunteer to help individuals in need. Those could be people who are homebound or individuals who are at risk or in the at-risk category of getting this disease. If they need prescriptions picked up or if they need a meal, food delivered, just a check-in call, just to say hello, to hear from somebody. So we've been using these forms both for volunteers to sign up to do those services as well as for individuals who may be in need of service, so that we have one central location. And those forms, again, are also on our website at doverma.org. And I really want to thank not only the incredible outpouring of support from the community that we've received. I think we've got close to 80 individuals who have signed up to offer to help, but also all of the COA in particular has been doing a really fantastic job of coordinating all those requests, reaching out to individuals, and starting to help delegate services out. The COA director and her team, through a few groups, even this week, just collected nice cards that were just, said, hello, we're thinking about you, that were delivered to seniors. And that's a really nice touch, making sure that we're both touching base and checking in with our residents and our vulnerable population. As we look forward, I would also say, looking back, that our public safety team has done and continues to do an incredible job in ensuring that they are prepared, both in terms of equipment and their own safety, but following the proper protocols if and when they have a call of at a location where there is someone who is even suspected of potentially having contact with this disease. So they are on the forefront of this, and certainly appreciate all of their efforts and all of their preparedness to date. And I would just quickly add, looking forward, this isn't over. We, a lot say, it could only get worse. So we've been, really focused on how do we ensure that we are continuously prepared to confront this if more and more people over the coming days and weeks end up getting to be quarantined. And that's really a big focus of ours over the next couple of days and the next couple of weeks. But I feel, as a community, from my vantage point, we are in a really good place as it relates to preparedness, as it relates to cooperation and collaboration with all the stakeholders, as well as the communication that has been going out to the community, as well as the leadership that we see from the Board of Selectmen and our Board of Health and some of our other boards and committees in towns. So that is my quick summary. I'm sure that I've missed some things, but I'll defer my time to others.
So, Mr. Springer, as the liaison to the task force from the Board of Selectmen, do you want to add anything to what Chris has said?
Oh, I'd love to add stuff to what Chris said. The problem is he covered it all.
Okay.
So I will say our going in position, and again, this is really working collaboratively, particularly with the Board of Health, and I special kudos to the Board of Health. I mean, I think they were pretty much in the forefront maybe even in the state, about doing things that were necessary to protect people and slow the spread of the virus. So when we started the task force, really there were two things. One was protect the at-risk people, as Chris had said, and that was a major focus, and then slow community transmission. And just to reiterate, I mean, in terms of slowing community transmission, the Board of Health was all over shutting things down, closing public buildings, making sure that just, the social distancing was hopefully adhered to. That was one of Steve's key points. And I do think that as you went through the last 2 weeks, you could easily observe many more people, not everybody, but many people practicing good habits in order to slow the spread of the virus. And Chris is absolutely right. Probably starting tomorrow with the task force meeting, we're going to pivot a little bit and start to play what if scenarios about what happens as more people become impacted by the virus. What happens if the number of quarantines go way up? What happens if we really do start, the state really does start to get overwhelmed by the disease? That would mean probably we would have mild and moderate cases of the virus quarantined in town, and we would obviously, who may need help. And so we have to make sure we plan that for that eventuality and be able to have resources in town who can help those kinds of people. Obviously, the serious cases would be moved to hospital. So that's the work we start in earnest tomorrow. And if we have the same sort of cooperative working relationships between the town employees and the two boards and the other people that we're going to have to call on, including volunteers, I think, it gives us a good head start.
Mr. Clark, would you like to comment on some of the things?
I think that what has become very instructive, if it's viewed, and I'll be glad to circulate it, I circulated it today to the two boards of health and councils on aging, is the daily update that breaks down the diagnosed or supposed illness by age group. And it puts very much to lie that the illness itself focuses on the, quote, elderly. Far from it. I think we do see everyone focused on the elderly only because of the mortality rates. And
I don't know if you can see anything, but
Yeah, in the middle.
no, I'm actually just a name.
Okay.
Figured I didn't need video.
Everybody, could you put yourself on mute, please, unless you're being called on to talk? Thank you.
This evening's announcement that the Jack Satter home in Revere that is run by the Hebrew Senior Life is another example of where a very tight cluster of elderly are now being infected. That's understandable. But I think we soften or even dilute the message that needs to go out that the young are very much participating in becoming infected. And that is clearly shown by the daily update figures. And again, I'd be happy to circulate those. They are broken down by county and by age group and by gender.
Dr. Peterson, is there something you would like to add? You're on mute. You have to take yourself off of mute.
Sorry, thank you. I'd like to mention one other person who's been working harder than any of the rest of us on this, and that's Alyssa Kaiser, who's the public health nurse we work with from the Walpole VNA. She's been she gets notified about all cases in our town as well as the other towns she works for. And then she works on instituting an isolation plan with the person who's going to be at home. She checks in with that person repeatedly during their period of isolation. And then she talks to family members, other household members about quarantine of themselves for 14 days after, at least 14 days, it often is longer. And then she does contact tracing for the infected person. So she spends hours on each case and is very diligent, calls Steve and me daily with updates and sometimes with problems she wants to discuss. And she has great judgment, and I just think she's doing an incredible job. One thing that we are working on with her is a strategy for identifying people who've returned from overseas travel and from domestic travel from hotspots in the US, such as California, Seattle, and particularly New York now. There are a lot of people, I'm sure you've read about this, leaving New York for wherever to get away from it. And we've certainly seen some people here in Dover that have done that. So what we're trying to do is identify those people, and Alyssa's trying to have them quarantine themselves for 2 weeks after they arrive in the Boston area, in Dover.
Is that something that we have on our website? Letting people know that if they have family members that have come in from hotspots, they should notify. Is it the Board of Health who they notify?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that question. They notify Jill Fedor, the nurse in charge of the regional school nurses. She's starting to work with Alyssa to help with the enrollment of these people in the program of quarantine. And yes, Chris put it up on the website, and we've also done some other, publicized it in some other ways. And when we have done that, we've gotten some calls very shortly after posting it. So it's a useful thing to be doing.
It's very useful. Mr. Springett, I think you raised your hand.
Okay, could you just spend a minute and talk about the work that's been done collaboratively with Sherburne, just to make sure we cover that base?
Oh, that's a good point, Bob. So we're trying to, so first of all, the Board of Health and the Council on Aging are meeting with the Sherburne boards as well, so that we are trying to share the work and send out the same messaging, particularly given that we have a shared school system and there's a lot of conversation among the parents. So we've been meeting twice a week, working on the kinds of topics we've discussed tonight, but it's very collaborative and helpful. Today, there was some work on a new piece of messaging about home deliveries and how to handle those safely that we'll be using in both towns, developed by Janet and Steve. It's very good, and we'll be working on that some more in the next day and then getting that out. But that'll be shared with Sherburne so that they don't have to duplicate the effort.
Right. I think definitely what's being demonstrated is the collaborative nature between all, the Board of Health, the Board of Selectmen, the COA, Public Safety, Sherburne, and it takes a village for us to conquer this. So I really appreciate everybody working together as a team, and I think this task force has really helped us as a town to address these issues that are critical to us today and may even become more severe at a later date. So I really thank all of you. I know it's been a tireless effort, and you meet twice a week, and I really appreciate everything you're doing for the town of Dover. I noticed that Janet Claypool, the director of COA, is on this call. Janet, would you like to add anything about your outreach to seniors?
Sure. I can comment that I appreciate the recognition of the COA team, though, because we have been working pretty hard to get the word out to everybody, but also the partnership with all the other people in town. We've had contact with quite a few seniors as we've tried to make sure that we're calling everybody that is 75 and older, as well as other people that we are connected with in the Council on Aging and those that are coping with chronic health issues. People have been really receptive to the phone call contacts and appreciative of the check-in, and some have asked for more support, which we've been able to give to them. We've also been the point of contact for the volunteers in the town, as Chris mentioned, and we have had tremendous outpouring for people wanting to help in many different ways. And many of these outreach contacts are being made by our volunteers because we couldn't do it all ourselves in as quickly a fashion as we would like.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes is on the call as well. He's the head of fire and emergency management. Is there anything you'd like to add about the COVID-19 effort?
No, just a wonderful thing. You put a great team in place early on. And what I've seen and what everybody's done, as always, the town of Dover is one step ahead, I believe, seeing this different tragedies over the years. But this is definitely a challenge. And you can be assured all the troops on the fire department, EMS, they're well-trained and ready for whatever comes before them, and we're doing pretty good in supplies, so not to worry. But no, a good team and good job.
Well, thank you. Before we stop talking about this, there is one item of business that we have, and there is funding available for this effort, and we did get a grant from the Massachusetts Health Officers Association of.
May I correct you?
You certainly may, Mr.
It is distributed by MHOA.
Okay.
It is actually an Executive Office of Health and Human Services grant, and it would have been through DPH, but they simply didn't have the personnel.
Okay, thank you for the correction.
And if I may note, 351 communities in the state had the opportunity to apply. 49 did. We're 254th in population, and we did pretty well.
And I applaud the effort for applying for the grant. So there will be an initial payment of $2,334 to the town of Dover. So I'd like to make a motion to accept this grant on behalf of the town of Dover. Do I have a second? Mr. Jeffries?
Second.
All in favor, and we will need to roll call. Aye for Robin Hunter.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Really, I can't thank all of you enough for the job you're doing. You know, all the town departments, all the volunteer committees. I agree with what Craig said. I think we can be proud of how prepared the little town of Dover, Massachusetts is. And we wouldn't be this prepared without the efforts of all of you. Mr. Paul, would you like to add something?
Yes, I just want to, in following on exactly what you said about the grant, I just wanted to inform you that we will expect to be drawing on those funds. I circulated the allowable expenditures, and the predominant one that I'm focusing on, as Kay said, Alyssa Kaiser is a one-only servicing a number of towns, and I've had discussions with the supervisor of the VNA, and I've indicated strongly that we are prepared to fund with this money or others an expansion of the service, whether it is working for Alyssa more hours of overtime but paid, or better yet, additional personnel. So that's probably the predominant use of this first tranche. It's not the only, it's the first.
Well, thank you for that. And it sounds like they will be very well spent. So the next item of business this evening is the Hale Reservation Conservation Restriction Warrant article vote. Mr. Dwelly, can I turn it over to you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 weeks ago at our last board meeting, there was discussion about the Hale warrant article placeholder that is presently on the warrant for our spring town meeting. And at that time, the board, through your discussion, indicated that at that time there was interest in withdrawing that warrant article, as there was discussion about it being too early on in the process, and that there was still due diligence to be done as it relates to this potential project. And so we brought it back before the board for an official vote this evening, if the board would like to officially withdraw it from the 2020 annual town meeting.
So, Mr. Jeffries, would you like to comment on this? I know you're the liaison to this task force and you were part of the recommendation that's been made.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the recommendation to withdraw is essentially to allow the committee and allow the Board of Selectmen to further expand the due diligence process in this entire effort. We felt that the appropriate thing to do was to follow the course recommended by the subcommittee. The subcommittee that I am a part of, that reports back to the board, has looked at this extensively. We have a very strong group of people that form this committee. The committee's suggestion was, rather than put this warrant article before the board, before the town at town meeting, the Board of Selectmen has the ability to fund the required due diligence that it takes to get this to the next step, to see if this entire process is a viable project for the town.
Oh, I just had a Negroni. So hold on, where's the
Excuse
thing?
me, whoever just joined the call, could you please put yourself on mute? Thank you. Mr. Springett, would you like to comment?
Well, I think we had a fairly robust discussion at the last meeting, and
I would agree.
And ultimately we decided that there is an opportunity to express to the town sort of the scope of Hale, and that's important. But I do think that when push comes to shove, we just need to spend more time to understand the benefits of the project, and it makes sense to do that work before we make a formal presentation to the town. But the town should be at least aware that this work is going on, and I think there's plans to make sure there are adequate forums, et cetera, to engage the town in this potentially big project.
Good.
Right, and I agree with that. I think we did have ample discussion, and the warrant article was put on the warrant as a placeholder, and it became apparently clear that at this juncture we just don't have enough information to present to the town. Mr. Jeffries, there are too many unanswered questions. John, would you like to comment?
No, thank you. That's exactly right. The efforts of the committee going forward are to drill down and to answer those questions. The questions of valuations, the questions of how do we, the town of Dover, juxtapose the valuation of our land versus the land in Westwood. So we will answer those questions. The Board of Selectmen have the ability to manage that process, to address everything that's required in that process, to then come back to the town, much like we did our open space initiative last year. This is very similar to some of the steps we took last year I would add also, Madam Chair, that as we have met continuously with Mr. Rapetti and with Warrant, it was very clear that Warrant was completely on board with this, and Warrant had the same goals and objectives in mind that the Board of Selectmen had, and it was their recommendation that we do the same thing, that we follow this course.
So then, with that being said, I would like to make a motion. I move that the Hale Reservation Conservation Restriction Warrant article be withdrawn from the 2020 annual town meeting warrant.
So moved.
I'm going to vote aye as the chair.
Aye. Bob
Mr.
Springer.
Jeffries?
Aye, Mr. Jeffries.
Okay, so that passed. Thank you all very much. The next item of business is to appoint a new one-day constable. As you know from prior meetings, Peg Crowley, who has been a one-day constable for as long as I can remember, is stepping down. And Felicia Hoffman, the town clerk, has requested that we appoint Chris Jackman as the one-day constable to work on the May 18th election, which I think might be postponed. Is that correct, Mr. Dwelling? And he will be replacing Peg Crowley, who cannot work on election day, as she is running for a town position and is on the ballot. So is there any discussion, Mr. Jeffries?
No, Madam Chair, I move the recommendation.
I will second that as the chair, and I vote yes. Mr. Springett?
So, I think there was.
Tongue-tied?
Excuse me?
Are you tongue-tied?
No. Hopefully I'm not on mute. I think there was a decision to move that meeting into June. So I don't know if this what we're doing should reflect that change.
So Chris, should we amend it to say May 18th or whenever it's going to be held?
My recommendation would be, and thanks for the reminder, I did forget something during my update, so I'll just very quickly add that in a preliminary conversation with the moderator and the warrant chair, and given Governor Baker's latest edict that schools will start no earlier than May 4th, it is very, we plan to move both town meeting and the town election and are finalizing the process in order to do that. So that will come. My recommendation would be to make the appointment based on whenever the town election, whenever the town has its next town election. Not knowing, we'll move it to June, mid-June likely, but that could potentially get moved out beyond that. So I've just mentioned whenever the next election is, and that should be sufficient.
Okay, so then I think I will amend the motion made by Mr. Jeffries to say that we appoint Chris Jackman as the one-day constable for the next town election. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
For okay. You have to say, these are the rules they told me we have to follow. You have to state your name and say aye.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Bob Springett, aye.
Thank you. So that will pass then. The next item of business is Board of Selectmen updates. And I do not really have an update. I think the COVID-19 update was the most important update, but I'm not sure if you, Mr. Springett, do you have anything to update the town on?
No, I think a lot of time has gone into the COVID-19 work, and I think Chris will cover some of the other ancillary issues at this point that continue to move forward.
And Mr. Jeffries?
Add one thing to I know Craig, Chief Hughes is on, and there's a lot of the other folks in town that were aware of this weekend, but I just wanted to say a congratulations to Chief Hughes and Chief McGowan on the efforts, and it really exemplifies what we have been talking about and what many people have covered this evening, and the spirit of the town and how we are so fortunate to be a part of this town. So just quickly, what happened this weekend was a member of our community with pre-existing medical conditions was missing on Saturday evening. And there was a search party, which Chief Hughes was an integral part of, together with Chief McGowan. Chief McGowan had reached out to me pretty early on in the process. Chief Hughes had most of the members of his staff at one point in his team a part of this search, and the search covered most of Dover to Westwood, actually all the way into Dedham. And so what happened was a member of the community went missing, again, pre-existing conditions. And during this time where everybody has been very aware of social distancing and the need to really have a heightened sense of awareness, on Sunday morning, the gentleman was still missing. Family was incredibly concerned. When you consider the amount of open space in the town of Dover and the amount of cherished space that we have that people could find their way into, Chief reached out to a number of people. We had in the past talked about mobilizing a group of Dover citizens and others that I ride with on mountain bikes through the wooded areas. We mobilized a group of 22 men and women within an hour on Sunday morning, and met at Town Hall, was awaiting the instructions of the chief, and again, all in coordination with the chief and the department. So long story short is that in this time of heightened sensitivity, 20 people mobilized within an hour, prepared to search within Noanette, Hale, the reservation. You can cover an amazing amount of space on a mountain bike. As we were prepared to start the whole process, the chief had called back and said that the gentleman had been seen in Dedham, and the Boston police were contacted. Within an hour of that, about a half hour of that time, the gentleman was found in the Boston area. So it was just an amazing outcome. Great job to the chief and to Chief Hughes and Chief McGowan. And I'm sure the family is just incredibly grateful for everything that the town did. So just wanted to share that with you as a sort of put a ribbon conversation.
Thank you. It's certainly indicative of the kind of service that's provided to us in this very small town and the sense of community that we all have, which I think does make Dover a very, very special place. Since there are no other Board of Selectmen updates, I'm going to turn it over to the town administrator, who's going to give us an update on the other things he and the staff have been doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have been trying to, and have done actually a pretty good job of being able to continue on with the day-to-day, which has been a nice reprieve. So a few things that I mentioned to the board this evening. One, we have selected our OPM highest ranked firm, and we are presently in negotiations with that firm, hoping to conclude those within the next few days in order to hopefully get a contract to the board when we meet next week. If successful, that'll allow us to begin the process in earnest with the building committee for the future of the Caryl Community Center, which is really exciting. So I want to thank the OPM Selection Committee for all their work and helping vet all of the candidates that we had, and really coming together to make a decision. By law, once I have a contract in place for you. I need to provide the board also with a detailed memo of our process, all finalists, what our vote was, and all those details. But I will say that it was a unanimous decision by the OPM selection committee, which is really great. So it was a great team, and so far a successful effort. I'd also like to mention that we have a conditional offer out to our municipal project manager candidate. And if all goes well, that individual will be on board April 13th. His background is in implementing municipal technology modernization projects in mass municipalities. And we're really fortunate to have an individual who's got that background and knowledge on really a lot of the projects that we're looking to get across the finish line that we've queued up for this individual. Those being digitizing a lot of our paper records and paper files and creating a streamlined and digitized process for those, as well as really modernizing a lot of our internal day-to-day processes, moving away from paper and shifting toward more of an electronic platform like electronic time and attendance, for example. So we're excited about the prospect of having this individual join Team Dover, and I think he'll make a great addition to the team, and we'll be able to continue to build on the great work that has happened over the past year. I would also mention that we are still working toward town meeting, like it would be happening in May, even though we know that is virtually unlikely at this point. So staff continue to finalize presentations and make sure that we have all our materials ready for that. Part of that is the financial reserve policy work, which Madam Chair, you're a member of that task force, and we were able to finalize our presentation, and that has been distributed to the group. And so I'm really excited to be able to partner with the board and the task force to speak to that to both the Warrant Committee and the community. I think that was a really thoughtful process, and I think what the group decided on will really set the community up for both financial solvency and financial strength for decades to come. And the last thing that I'd like to mention this evening is that the finance team has been and will continue to meet as it relates to the budget. So at the board's last meeting, the board did vote to authorize and approve the Board of Selectmen budgets. We're not at a place at this point where we are concerned about having to pare back or make any cuts to the FY budget. But we do want to go in and really make sure all of our revenue streams, such as state aid, are really, really conservative given the crisis that we face. So we want to be cognizant of things like, let's make a buffer, right? If state aid ends up getting level funded or even cut from this year, let's make sure that we have a sense on where we're going to come in on our pension liability, which is market driven. So what we're doing is we're just making sure that whatever we go forth with next year, that we are in a good place financially and able to afford what we're asking for. So I'll continue to work with the financial team on that work, and we'll provide a memo to the board in the coming days on some of the things that we're thinking about. But given that we've got still some time to head into town meeting, that'll allow us to have a clearer picture of what we can expect and if there's anything that we should be concerned of. So those are the major items that I had, and I just want to thank Kate and the team for getting us queued up for our first fully remote meeting, also being live streamed, which is really great. I see people on Facebook right now watching it, so thank you.
Yes, thank you for the update, Chris. And I think that's definitely a worthwhile exercise, you know, looking in light of what's going on today is seeing what we might need to do if some of our funding assumptions are a little more aggressive than they should be. I don't have anything else on the agenda. Again, I would like to thank all the town departments, the committees, for all the work that has been done around COVID-19. I can't thank you enough. My dog is playing soccer now, so I think it's time for the meeting to be adjourned. So I think this meeting went really well, so thank you all, except for the few hiccups at the beginning with feedback. I think we got a hang of it. It actually worked well. So I'd like to thank you all for participating this evening via video conference. For those of you watching us on Facebook, thank you. There will also be a video, I guess, of this put up on the cable channel that you can watch at a later date. I probably got the term wrong. I see Chris smiling. So with that, I'd like to adjourn our meeting this evening. I'd like to, I will vote aye for adjournment. Mr. Springett?
Bob Springett, aye.
John Jeffries.
Jeffrey? Well, thank you all. Stay safe and healthy, and our next meeting is April 2nd.